Hi, and happy 420. Before we get into today's Solarium episode, the witches want to remind you that smoking anything can have a negative effect on your lungs and your health. So please make sure before you start smoking that you consult a health professional. And as always, we may be amazing witches, but we are not doctors.
It's witchcraft.
Welcome, witches, pagans, heathens, and magical souls, to the Solarium, Chelle and Laylla's herbal haven, a sunlit sanctuary where we take serene moments away from our computer screens to sit in the sun, drink a pot of enchanted tea, and take a few mystic tokes while we talk about topics both mundane and profound. Today, we are talking all things cannabis for 420. Happy 420, everybody. I'm Laylla, and this is my co-host Chelle, and today we'll be talking about the magic of cannabis.
Wow, happy 420.
So, Chelle, we have actually had something happen that we have not had happen yet.
Do tell.
We have been invited to someone's wedding.
Are you freaking kidding me?
No, I'm not. We have been invited to the wedding of Brandon and Morgan. Now, Brandon and Morgan are getting married in Utah on 420, and so unfortunately we won't be able to make it. But we wanted to say thank you for inviting us and happy freaking wedding. Congratulations.
Oh my God. Guys, congrats. And you know what? This bowl's for you.
This one is for Brandon and Morgan. Congratulations. We're going to smoke up in your honor. And thank you so much. We are so honored that you invited us to your wedding and your reception. So we hope you have a wonderful day.
Hey, Morgan, can I just say there is someone who is very close and dear to me that I love deeply who has the same name as you. So yeah, if you guys ever have a baby, name it Chelle. Seriously. Just saying.
So there you go, straight from Chelle's mouth. Maybe that's coming soon. So enjoy your wedding. Congratulations and many, many blessings to you and your brand new family. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And I can't believe it's April, first of all. 420, I got into this conversation the other day. How did this become our day? Do you have history on this?
I do. And that
I figured you
history... That history is fraught with, shall we say, controversy, but there's a few different takes on what 420 means.
Well, I figured that might be a good place for us to start our solarium. Like, why are we here? Other than, get high. It happens.
That's a damn good enough reason. But 420 became a thing supposedly because back in I think it was in the 70s, there was a group of friends that would get together after school and they would always be able to meet up by 420. So it quickly became slang, hey, 420 today? Sure, 420. That was the time they were able to get together. And that became their slang for smoking weed. And it's just one of those things that caught on and grew like wildfire. And I think that's the most accepted history of it.
Okay, so that actually makes sense because back in our heyday, you used to show up at my house at about 8:20, which is a little bit double of 420. So yeah, I get it. Now, because this is our solarium and, for all things weed, you are the wizard. Why don't we delve into how does marijuana translate into your magical practice?
Cannabis is not just something fun to do with your friends like we always did. It's not just a medicine. It can also be something called an entheogen.
She says did like we didn't do that 2 weeks ago. Just
Yeah. Like that's not a regular occurrence. But it is also a sacred plant. It is a plant that can help you find oneness, that can help you be in touch with the deity within yourself and within all things. That's what an entheogen is. And cannabis kind of falls into that category. It has been used that way for thousands of years. They have found cannabis in shamans' graves, in medicine people's graves. It was written in, I believe we both talked about a Chinese scholar.
Emperor Nung.
That's right.
Yes. He was the inventor of cannabis and tea.
He's the first person to write about the properties of cannabis and its medical uses. And he is considered the father of Chinese medicine. He also invented tea. So they have those things in common, which is, another reason why we love blending those things here in the solarium.
And speaking of fathers, I just got to stick it in here. The father of our country, Mr. George Washington, did smoke marijuana. Just saying, had to put it out there.
He did indeed inhale.
Yes, he did inhale.
That's right.
You recently just did a workshop at Sacred Space that had to do with cannabis and herbal smoking and things of that nature. So, aside from the ritual, one of the things I wanted to also talk about a little bit about your workshop without, giving away your whole workshop on this episode, because that's a different episode, folks. I also want to get into how you can utilize it that way as well. So,
cannabis as an entheogen is something that you can definitely utilize in your practice. One of the things that I really like to talk about in a workshop or a presentation about cannabis is helping people to get in touch with what Kathleen Harrison, who is an ethnobotanist, she was married to Terence McKenna and has worked with entheogens, including cannabis, all over the world. She likes to talk about the spirit of cannabis. And I truly believe that this plant is alive in a magical sense and is something that we can connect with. And by connecting with the spirit of cannabis, you can connect better with yourself, you can connect better with the world and with other people. Our bodies are specifically designed to work with cannabis. We have an endocannabinoid system in our brains that the active components of cannabis like THC, CBDs, CBGs, the terpenes all work with. And so it seems like the perfect fit, the perfect match to working with magic. So I like to help people get in touch with the green goddess. I like to help them get in touch with the confluence of magic that happens when you add cannabis to the mix, whether in your incense, your tea, or in a smokable spell. There's definitely ways that we can honor the herb as well as use it as an entheogen to help us get deeper into our practice, either by using it before you do magic in order to help yourself get more easily into magical space or into a magical headspace, or if you use it as a sacred smoke, using it as an incense or as an offering in your magic, there's lots of different places where you can use it. And that's basically what the focus of the workshop was breaking down the different types of cannabis and how to incorporate it into your magical practice.
And we actually have done it, all of those things. We have done it prior. We have done it during spell work. We've made it a part of ritual. I've added it to our incense, although in small quantities, because man, waste not, want not. That shit's not cheap. We've even used it as offerings to deity. I think we've used it as offerings to Fae in the past.
We have. We've even given it up as a sacrifice. We gave it up as a sacred sacrifice. Back before the year 2000, before the turn of the century, our coven had called the big ritual of the year Beltane, which is also coming up after this episode airs. And Beltane 2000 was a big deal, and we were very, very excited to not only have the honor of putting on this festival, which could be for 200, 300 plus people, but also because it was the year 2000. It was so special.
It was like some sacred, it was like some sacred event because it was Beltane 2000.
Yeah, we were super stoked about it. We were very excited. And so prior to, this was a year-long preparation. There was a lot of work that went into putting on this ritual for our community. And 1 month before May 1st, we as a coven got together because we were pretty much all smokers, not everybody, but most of us. We got together and we gave big sacrifices. And for those of us that were smokers, we gave up smoking cannabis for a month.
And the couple of people that were in the coven that were not smokers gave up something of equal spiritual value to them. And we all committed to kind of like a 1 month sacrifice. Think of it as our Lent. It was our Lent.
Yeah, it was a big one too. And it's not like, I know people that for Lent, they'll give up Brussels sprouts or whatever, something they don't like.
This was a big deal for us.
It was very much so. It was something we gave up, something very important, something that we did, like you said, as a group. We would get together and smoke and do magic or smoke and hang out. It was very much a part of our lives and our friendship. And so giving it up was not easy. It was an amazing transformative experience. I think that whole year-long trial before we put on Beltane, it was amazing. And giving up weed as a sacrifice was part of it.
And I think that was definitely like I had never prior to that thought about that whole sacrificing thing,
Hmm.
not necessarily being raised Christian. Lent wasn't something I was necessarily familiar with.
Right.
And I didn't realize mentally, spiritually, even emotionally at times, the mental fortitude it took to get through those damn 30 days.
Yeah.
And we did it as a group and we were better for it on the other side. Do not think for 1 second that on day 32 we weren't
Puffing like
sparking that shit.
dragons.
Right, right,
Oh, we
right.
were blazing.
We wanted to go into that big facilitator role. I don't want to say with a cleansed spirit but kind of. And it
Kind
has
of, yeah.
it has nothing to do with what weed is or what people think weed is. It was more of that making that sacrifice. That's just what we chose to sacrifice, but cleansing of the soul of giving something up.
Exactly. And that can be good for you in any situation. If you give something up and you commit to that, that's a very powerful magical act, no matter what it is that you're giving up. And for me, one of the things that giving up cannabis revealed to me was how sacred it was to me and how intrinsically I used it in a magical way without even realizing it. That was my real awakening to the fact that I wasn't just smoking to get high. I was smoking for other reasons as well. And the biggest revelation was that I missed the ritual of getting ready to smoke more than I missed actually smoking.
And I remember you saying that at the time and me looking at you like, what the holy Jesus are you saying to me?
Yeah, but it makes so much sense. I have a place, a special place, not all the time, but I have a place where I like to smoke. And it's set up kind of like an altar. I have a beautiful pipe that I like. I have a lighter with a pretty lighter case on it. Even taking the cannabis out, breaking it up, and either rolling it into a joint or packing it into a bowl, those acts all have a meaning. And I think it hit me when I was in your workshop about tea, when you were talking about the tea ceremony and how the ceremony itself is the important part and the drinking of the tea is not really the
The
goal.
preparation is the ritual, not the consumption. Yes.
Yeah. A light bulb went off in my head because that's exactly how I had been treating cannabis most of the time. I mean, obviously, I just love sparking one up with my bestie, but there is usually a ritual to it, and that's what I missed. And so after that sacrifice, after that Beltane ritual, I started consuming cannabis more intentionally, more magically. And I was like, hey, this burns like an incense. Why not let it be an incense? Why not smoke it with other herbs? And so that's where things really started to change for me.
That's a good segue into I wanted to touch on the incense factor because we've done the same thing. I would make these awesome blends for us as a coven. We'd burn them for specific occasions. Sometimes adding some cannabis to that incense mix was called for. There is a herbal tarot deck, which, yes, it's part of my collection. I love it. And the 10 of Cups is the marijuana card. And I remember showing you that for the first time and you being like, finally,
Yay. It's the happy family card.
it is. But at the bottom of that specific card on that specific deck, it says happily ever after. That always stuck with me after that deck that when I use marijuana in an incense or in a tea blend, it's for that joy factor, that happiness factor. Maybe you're making an incense to bring happiness into your life. Throw a few pinches of weed in that shit. So there is magical properties that you can utilize in things such as your incense, your teas. And let me tell you, that Gorilla Glue, it does not taste like grape in a tea. It's sad. I can't help it, but it doesn't.
No. And she's talking about the weed Gorilla Glue, not the product Gorilla
Not the
Glue.
product. Or like grape ape. Grape ape does not taste like grape ape if you put some in a tea. It's sad.
No.
But you can utilize the magical properties not just for smoking. Maybe you don't want to smoke it for whatever reason, which is absolutely okay. We're not judging. But you can utilize it in things such as incense, for example.
And before I lose the thought, if you're lucky enough to know a grower and can get your hands on just the fan leaves, the five-fingered leaves or seven-fingered leaves that you see all the time in pop culture or
Propaganda.
whatever. Yeah, probably. If you can get your hands on like a handful of those leaves and dry that and use that for your incense, then you won't feel so much like you're wasting your flower. You can just use the fan leaves and get the same properties if you're using it. I loved seeing cannabis in the herbal tarot. And the biggest reason why is because herbalists don't think of cannabis as an herb. And it's weird to me how often I'll talk to an herbalist and they just start blinking when you talk about cannabis as an herb. But it is. It's a plant. It's an herb. It has magical properties. It has medical properties. It has cooking uses. It's a very useful herb. But we have been so brainwashed, I guess. It has been written out of so many things that even herbalists forget that cannabis is just an herb.
It really is. I mean, you know why they call it weed?
Why?
Because it's a freaking weed, man. Just like a dandelion. But you don't see people sitting here saying, oh, we can't talk about dandelion wine because that's a weed. Dandelion, marijuana, both weeds. But yet we respect dandelions and we don't respect marijuana. I'm just saying.
I do love dandelions, and I'm going to have to stop you right here because my stoned ass is looking at all the dandelions in my brand new yard. And I just have to say, okay, I've moved. Cat's out of the bag. I am living in the path of the solar eclipse, if any of you have heard that episode.
I called it, just saying.
Chelle read the Farmer's Almanac.
Yep.
Eclipse. Farmer's Almanac Eclipse said that Aquarians follow the solar eclipse. And somehow, 2 weeks later, I ended up moving.
Following the solar eclipse.
I am now living in the wilds of northern Pennsylvania and absolutely loving my little former church that's now a house in the woods. And I have dandelions all over my beautiful yard.
If you'd have asked me 3 months ago if you'd be living in northern PA right now, I would have giggled in your face. Just saying.
Well, as you know, I have kind of a nomadic soul, and so I end up moving more often than most, but we really love it here. And real quick, before we get back to our cannabis and tea and herbs, I do want to say that when we moved in, I made sure to follow a bunch of different customs.
Do tell. Real quick, do tell.
I only brought my magical brooms. And we purchased a brand new house broom to sweep with because you're not supposed to bring old brooms from one house to another. So we got a new broom.
Now I have to interrupt here and just put this out there. I actually was with you when you went to the house to get the keys for the first time. She literally, people, hands me a salt shaker and I'm like, and a thing of bread. I'm like, what are we eating when we get there? And she's like, it's because we're going to the house for the first time. I was like, oh yeah. Like here I am holding a salt shaker and a freaking bag of bread, thinking that she's making me a damn sandwich. No, it's Layla's rituals.
It is. Chelle brought in, let's see, Chelle carried the salt. I think one of my daughters carried in the bread. I brought in the new broom. I took our Basom Calling herbal tea and smokable blend and I sprinkled that on the threshold and swept that into the house first because you're supposed to sweep in something good to your house before you ever sweep anything out of it.
We forgot one of your new house rituals.
What's that?
We need to get high in your living room, man.
You'll be coming down soon enough and we'll be playing Catan and getting high all over the house. So yeah, so I followed a few rituals there, I have to say. Oh, and we all blew cinnamon in every door. And you helped with that.
I helped with that. I actually have a picture of your daughter blowing the cinnamon. Super cute.
I love that. So yeah, we followed a few things going into our new house. So I do love that. All right, so back to our regularly scheduled program. Cannabis is a weed, just like dandelions. And yeah, I wish more witches would add it to their herbal compendiums.
There's one thing that weed's bad for, and it breaks my heart to say it. It's not the tastiest drink. I've put in like literally a tiny pinch in a couple of blends for magical purposes, but like you ain't gonna want to be drinking marijuana tea because it kind of tastes like ass. If you're of a Gen X age, if you were kind of smoking a little bit in the late 90s, early 2000s, think of it as it tastes like bong water. That's all I'm gonna say to you.
Now that really is going to depend on how you prepare it. My father, who is a cannabis grower himself from way back, was actually incarcerated back in the day, but different podcast. He likes to make tea out of his sugar leaves. And what sugar leaves are to a grower is they're fan leaves, but they have started to get trichomes on them. They get some crystals just like a bud does. Not really worth smoking, but they make a fabulous tea.
Okay, see, since I'm not a grower, I was not, I don't have necessarily access to that. So I was just going straight on buds. So that could be the difference.
That very well could. And I'll make you some tea out of that. Now, using anything like a fan leaf or a bud to make tea, you're going to want to make sure that you have maybe some heavy cream in there or just drink it quickly because the hot water will activate your THC, especially if you've decarbed it first by cooking it in the oven at a low temperature.
So what are you saying? If you let the liquid cool, it gets lessened?
First of all, you need to activate your THC in whatever you're going to eat. And so if you're going to make tea out of it, if you're going to cook with it, you're going to want to do something called decarbing it. You put that in your oven at a low temperature. We'll put a whole recipe on how to do that.
Get it? Bake your weed.
Bake you.
Bake your
Yes.
weed.
What that does is it activates the THC, much like putting a lighter to your flower in your bowl does, so that your body can process it. Once it's decarbed, you can then put it in your tea, and then the heat will again activate the THC. If it cools down, if there is no fat in your tea, it will not stay there. It's going to burn off in the smoke. Basically, what you need is some type of fat. That's why people make butter a lot of times with your weed, because the fat absorbs the THC.
If you don't want to use cream, if you put honey in the tea, would it stick to the honey or does it have to be cream?
Any type of fat. And I think sugars will also work, but not as well. But basically, it just means if you're putting it in something like tea, just drink it. Drink it while it's in there and experiment with it a little bit. I'll make you some sugar leaf tea and see if you like that any better, Chelle.
Look at you teaching me something about tea. You know, I guess my problem is you've been like this marijuana connoisseur. I remember I used to call you a pot snob
You did.
and a horticulturist because you are like the best grower ever in life.
Not true, but thank you.
I just smoke it. I just smoke it and I'll put it in incense. So maybe so we could kind of left turn back into something I'm more familiar with. Let's talk about a couple times we've used it during actual ritual.
Oh, okay. Let's do that.
We've done various things like dream walks, astral projections, things of that nature. We have utilized marijuana within ritual space to kind of put our minds in a different place, so to say, or maybe make that thin veil a little clearer to us. Sometimes if you focus too hard on stuff, you don't see it. And when you can't really focus hard, everything becomes clear. Does that make sense?
Oh, it really does. It sounds like very much a magical mindset and utilizing cannabis as an entheogen, as something that allows you to see the connections and the divine in all things. You want to be careful. Make sure your dosage is appropriate to you and to where you're at because you don't want to be so stoned that you can't do ritual.
Right. This isn't a time to be silly and funny.
That's right. You want to use just a little bit, just enough to help you get in touch with that magical mind and get to the point where you're comfortable and happy and can start to direct your thoughts and your intentions towards whatever ritual or spell you have put together.
And I know that Layla doesn't like these names because she's like way much more of a pot snob than the majority of us here, folks. But you're going to probably want to kind of go more with a sativa for this type of working. They don't call it indica couch for nothing. So you don't want to be smoking indicas and then, just be drooling on the couch. You're going to want a sativa where you are going to be able to still function within ritual space and do what you're intending to do. So
Yeah.
I know you don't like indica and sativa, but I'm just putting it out there.
You're exactly right. And we're not going to get into it in this particular podcast, but sativa and indica are not the best ways to categorize things anymore. However, Chelle is exactly right. You do want something that's more upbeat, a higher sativa type cannabis.
Just roll with it, Layla. Stop your judgments.
I like to get more into the terpenes because I do think terpene content is going to help you much more than sativa, indica, or hybrid will. But she's right. You want something with more of an uplifting high. You can even ask your bud tender, hey, which of these has an uplifting high that's not going to make me paranoid?
And if you don't want to tell your bud tender that you're doing, some witchcraft business, just be like, hey, do you got any weed that I can smoke while I clean the house?
Yes, there you go. Exactly. So, or weed that I can smoke while I'm listening to music and studying. That type of weed. Something
Right.
that'll get you not in the couch, but can keep your brain and your body active. And so I do recommend that you go very, very light on it, unless you're an experienced person with meditation or with magical mind states, because it will immediately put you into a deep alpha state where if you're not experienced with it, it can make you feel lightheaded. It can make you feel dizzy. You might not be able to direct your thoughts as well as someone who has worked in meditative and magical mind states frequently.
And the other thing I wanted to point out about using it ritually is depending on your style of doing ritual, you may at the beginning kind of quote unquote bless all of your altar or bless your altar tools that you would just include marijuana as you would with any other altar tool. So, if you were going to bless, say, cakes and wine, you would do this the same way. Again, the purpose isn't to get, silly and giggly. It's more to get you in, for lack of a better phrase, that non-mundane mindset.
Exactly. If you use just a little bit of cannabis, it can really help you feel like you've done a full relaxation meditation. It can get you into a place where you are better able to reach out to your deities, reach out to your ancestors.
That's why this isn't the time and place to be getting like totally blazed.
No, this is like you want to be think Thanksgiving dinner. You want to go out with your cousins and get just blazed enough to be able to get through dinner without being mad at anyone, but you still want to be able to hold a conversation with your grandma.
Right, right.
So you want to be about that high. But I really liked what you were saying about blessing your items. And that's a very fun first thing to do is you can find a small pipe that can be your magical pipe. This is a pipe you only smoke when you're doing spell work, or this is the pipe that I use when I'm offering smoke to my ancestors, and do a full ritual to dedicate it, bless it, and do the same thing with your weed. If you have a stash jar, bless the jar and then bless the weed as you're putting it in there.
Makes it a little more sacred than, say, your party weed.
Exactly. And so then, this isn't just weed for getting high or for pain management. This is weed for ritual
Ritualistic
purpose.
purposes. Yep.
Exactly. And now one of my favorite simple things is to roll a joint. I like a good joint.
I can't roll a joint if my life depended on it. 30-year smoker, I'd have to go without before I could roll a joint. I hate it.
One of my favorite simple spells to do is to take a rolling paper and just with a tiny bit of spit, draw a sigil, come up with a sigil beforehand. Like Chelle was just talking about cleaning her house. So maybe I'm doing some spring cleaning and I want to turn this into a little bit of a pre-Beltane ritual. I would create a sigil for a blessed house and I would draw that sigil just in a little tiny bit of spit on my rolling paper. Then I would take my herbs, just a little bit of cannabis, just a small amount of cannabis, and I would add to it maybe some mullein for protection, some lavender for peace, a little bit of rose petals for happiness in the home, and make that about 50% of the blend and the other 50% cannabis, and then just roll a little joint. And then as you're smoking that joint, walking around your house, cleaning your house, when you're blowing out the smoke, you are essentially smoke cleansing your home. You're bringing that smoke internally and then you're blowing it back out, blessing it with your energy, combining all that energy together, and then blowing that spell, that smoke out with your intention to bless your home.
And that's also while you're smoking that a good time if you did happen to have, say, a chant or some rhythmic spell that you wanted to speak, do that in between puffs.
Yeah, play some great music with an excellent beat in the background. Use that music as well because you can use sound to cleanse a space. You don't have to use smoke, so you can combine that and use the music, your voice, and the smoke to help cleanse your space. Very simple.
And, if meditation is your thing, which Layla loves meditation almost as much as journaling.
Almost as much as cannabis.
Cannabis can be a good way to kind of get you into a more deep meditative state, that deep alpha state. And again, no overkill here. Like Layla said, just smoke enough to deal with your grandma on Thanksgiving. But you can kind of harness that into going into that deep alpha. And that's a good time to, do some personal shadow work.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Or ancestor work. things of that nature, just kind of that going within type work. So that is also, I don't know if you want to call that a spell or a ritual. I don't know how you'd phrase that, but that's a thing you can do.
Yeah, it most definitely is. And I love that you brought up meditation, Shell, because we all know you are very meditation resistant. But if we give you a really good bowl, something that you very much enjoy to smoke, with the intention of, okay, Shell, we're going to smoke this fatty, and then
You're
we're going to
more
do
apt to get me there.
exactly. And then, once you're like, all right, I'm already stoned, I'm in the couch, then, we would do the meditation and we would go through the whole guided meditation and it would be no problem because you're already, when you get stoned, when you get high, again, you don't have to get so blazed. You can't talk to your grandma, but when you get a little high, that kind of breaks down those barriers sometimes and allows you to get into that meditative state.
Well, and I think for me personally, as you can totally attest to, I'm kind of always functioning at top speed, at Mach speed, go, 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 one thing to the next. And that's probably why meditation ain't my bag,
Right.
because that's like a slowdown that I don't have time for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why marijuana can get me to that spot because it's almost like it forces my brain to slow down and stop thinking about A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z and focus on a meditative journey.
Yeah, and it can do that for a lot of people. And you have to experiment a little bit and find where you're comfortable with that so that you can incorporate it into your meditation or into your spell work. We've talked about using it as a aid when you're meditating as an offering to your ancestors. And I started that because my father-in-law, my husband's father, very wonderful guy.
I've smoked with them.
We've smoked with him a lot. And he and I used to grow together. I'd get out of work, I'd head over to his house, we'd work a few hours in our garden, and then I'd go home to my husband and my kids for the night. And we did that for a long time. We were very close. He was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I remember reaching out to him, and I reached out to him while smoking a joint because it was very natural to do. And that's where I really started using cannabis with ancestor work because it was simple to call him in meditative space, while at my ancestor altar. It was natural to spark up a joint and reach out to him that way. And a few times after doing that, he wasn't the only ancestor that came to say thank you for the offering. So I was like, oh, wow, this.
What you're saying is he wasn't the only one to come to your spiritual smoke sesh.
That's exactly right. And while most of them didn't come to partake like he does, they did come because it was a smoke offering, because it was an offering of the heart, because it was an offering of something sacred to
They
me.
smelled the good weed. Tell the people.
Or they just smelled the good shit and wanted in on that. So, but yeah, that's when I realized that could be an offering for other ancestors as well, even if they weren't necessarily, or if I didn't know if they were cannabis users in life. It was still a good offering to the spirits and to the ancestors. They accepted it.
And I've actually used it as an offering to deity. Now, before people flood our email and say, what deity is an offering of marijuana for? You know what? I made it up, did it on my own. As we've talked about in the past, I'm Hecate's girl, always have been. I probably always will be. I have used it as offering to her.
Oh, Hecate loves a good joint. It's a torch, baby.
But are you going to find that in a book or
No,
in a Wikipedia about Hecate? I'm guessing no. But
no.
in Shell's Book of Shadows,
Oh,
it is the
yeah,
official offering to Hecate. Don't judge me.
exactly. No, Layla says a joint is Hecate's torch, and she has been
Right,
more than happy to accept that as an offering.
right.
Now, there are deities, and we'll get into that again some other time, but Seshet is a lesser known Egyptian goddess, and
Did you
she
really just say Seshet?
I did. I know. Isn't that terrible? She's the
Likes a good
goddess of
smoke
seshes,
sesh.
right? She literally has what looks like a cannabis leaf over her head. And there's some debate on whether it's a palm leaf or a cannabis leaf, but
My vote's cannabis.
mine too. She really fits it. There's also the story about Shiva. Lord Shiva is the god of Bang, Bhang, Bong. It's a drink made with cannabis.
Sounds like bong, don't it?
It do. Now, there's a whole story with Shiva where long, long ago, there was a great poison that was released that went around the whole world. And in order to save mankind, Shiva went around and he ingested all of this poison. He took it into himself and he was dying. And his wife made him a cannabis drink, bong, and he drank it and it cured him. So cannabis not only cured him, it was his favorite drink.
I totally believe it.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of deities that use cannabis, and you can, like Chelle said, they don't have to explicitly be a cannabis deity in order for you to offer that. It's an offering just like apples or oranges or your first harvest or your sweat, your tears, whatever. It's an offering like any other.
You know how I kind of looked at it way back in the day was way back in the day, you couldn't get a lot of information on Hecate. She wasn't what everybody was hot to be, following. It was kind of oh, wow, good luck. And it was hard to get information. So I didn't know how to find out what I quote unquote was supposed to be offering to her. So I took it as, because it was sacred to me, then it must be good enough to be sacred to her. You know what I mean? Like, if it was important enough to me and I'm willing to use that as an offering, then she is going to respect that and accept that as an acceptable offering, is kind of the mindset I ran with.
That's what offerings are supposed to be. That's why we gave it up as a sacrifice before we did Beltane, because it was something that was important to us. It was one of the first things we did. We'd get together, we'd spark up, we'd smoke, we'd talk about the day, we'd talk about everything while we were smoking. So to give that up was important. And that's really an offering that you give to your ancestors, to your deities, to whatever. It's supposed to be something from the heart. It's something that you feel that you're giving up.
Now, I want to kind of hit you with a blast from the past. I didn't tell you prior that I wanted to mention this, but in our old podcast, The Stoned Witches Hour, we always opened every episode with, "Hey, what you smoking?" So I really just want to kind of circle back to that good time. And Layla, what you smoking tonight?
Tonight, I am smoking some Blue Dream. Very delicious, very good.
That's so funny because right now I actually have a little bit of Blue Dream. It's not
Do
what I'm
you
smoking.
really?
It's not what I'm smoking, but I actually have some. How funny. Keep going. Tell me about it before I tell you about my...
It's delicious. It has a nice smoke. I'm very happy with it. I haven't actually added any herbs to this today. I'm just smoking straight Blue Dream. With all the moving, I'm a little sore, so I need the extra THC hit.
That muscle relaxing, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I have Planet of the Grapes.
Yeah. That is a great name. That's a great name.
Anybody who's listened to the Stone Witches Hour knows that the THC content is a priority to Chelle. So this is 28.8 THC,
Nice. Good
which
number.
is funny.
Good number.
28 grams, 28.8. Shit works out. But I have a complaint, and I know I've talked about this before, but I have a complaint.
What's your complaint?
If you're going to put grape in the name, damn it, could it taste like grapes? Is that too much taste?
This is Chelle rule number 376. If you're going to put a fruit in the name of the weed, it should taste like that fruit.
Damn it.
What are they thinking?
Damn it. What are smokers mostly associated with? Munchies, eating. So you're going to talk about a fruit and not have it taste like that? Really? Really? Really?
So rude. So rude.
So rude. But good shit. Aside from my bitch about the name, good shit.
I think someone asked in a Spotify comment about, I think they were asking about smoking mugwort in use in ancestor meditation.
Yeah, I don't smoke. Sounds like we're talking about freaking whiskey. I don't necessarily smoke herbs straight.
No, I almost always smoke them with cannabis. There are, so you break up your herbs into base, supportive, and flavoring herbs. And I would say mugwort is either a base or a supportive herb. They tend to have a thicker smoke. They can be like the most in your mixture.
All I can think about is how it would just taste like shit, to be honest with you. Not gonna lie.
I've never had it in tea, so I don't know how it tastes there. But in a smoking blend, mugwort is actually kind of pleasant. It's a little sweet, it's a little earthy. It's nice. I've never used it as the main herb, mostly because mugwort can have some psychoactive properties. But as a supportive herb, I really like it in a blend. And yes, mugwort does have some properties to it that help you very much get into a meditative mindset. Some of these herbs do have psychoactive properties, and mugwort is one of them. So for an ancestor meditation, I have a blend that I like to smoke along with my cannabis. That is mugwort, blue lotus, skullcap, and wild daga. You want that to be about a quarter. I usually like that to be not a lot. About a quarter of my smoke, a third to a quarter. And what that mixture does is it really does help your body, your brain get very relaxed. It helps you get into alpha state. It helps you to reach out through the veil to the other side. So using that type of blend in your meditation or ancestor work can help you connect. So to the person who asked if I do smoke mugwort, yes, it's not my favorite. I don't add it all the time. But yes, mugwort, blue lotus, there's a couple other herbs that do have a little bit of a psychoactive property and will help you either get into a meditative state or go to sleep, depending on how you're using them.
Yeah, I smoke cannabis, but other than that, I don't smoke any other herbs. I stick kind of to the incense piece of that, burning
Yeah,
wise.
and cannabis too, for tea and for incense. She's not so much on smoking the herbs. Whereas I like to, I use them when making incense mixes. I use them in teas and also in smokable blends because I do like the flavor of extra herbs added in with my cannabis. And I do very much enjoy the feeling of smoking my spells.
You know what? I actually just thought of something. I just told y'all a big fat lie. I am a cigarette smoker as well. And it just dawned on me when I was thinking about that as you were speaking that you and I actually together have smoked clove cigarettes, which clove
That's
is
true.
technically. So I have smoked cloves before, but not
I don't
anything
think we
else.
smoked
No.
those ritually. Those were more like after Rocky Horrors
We
clove
were trying to be
cigarettes.
cool. Remember they were in like pink and green and orange paper?
Well, they just tasted good. I'm not a tobacco smoker, but I do like clove.
So I have smoked or that particular one before, but yeah, I don't know. You've even tried, especially with, your current workshops that you're doing to have me do the blends with the cannabis. And I've done it with you and it's tasty, but in the same respect, I haven't come home and done it. You know what I mean?
We have a lot of the same herbs. I believe for our workshops, we kind of mixed and matched our herbs for the different, for the
Yeah,
tea and for the
you're smoking
smokables.
some of them and I'm just drinking them.
That's right. That's right. You more drink them, I more smoke them.
But when I've been with you, I have smoked mixtures with you.
Yeah.
But again, not really straight on herbs minus the cannabis. They've always had that cannabis mixture in them.
Yep. And on our high holy day today of 420, I'm going to say pick 4 different kinds of weed for your directions. Pick one each for the god and goddess and smoke each of those straight. You don't
To
have
make
to
a
add anything.
salad.
But I really do enjoy the feeling of breaking up the different herbs and putting them together as spell components and then smoking that, taking those intentions, taking those ingredients and bringing that smoke and combining it in me with my intention and then blowing that back out to the universe. It feels very powerful to me. I very much enjoy that in spell work.
I will also say that this is absolutely just as powerful as an ingredient as any other ingredient in your spell work or your ritual work. Damn the stigma, but it is also equally a magical tool.
Yep. And I do have to point out that now I live in a prohibition state. I live in a state where it is only medically legal. It is
That
not,
blows my mind. Why did
right?
you move there?
I'm not sure, but I can't smoke here. They actually do not allow you to smoke in Pennsylvania, even if you have a medical card. So once I get my medical card transferred to here, I still will not be able to smoke it. It has to be eaten or vaporized. So I know that there are initiatives here to make it legal, which I will be joining. But until then, I will only be smoking herb across the border in New York State because
Well,
here it's
sister,
illegal.
get your witchy self on your broom. pull out Hagatha, hop on, come over to Salem, and let's just light that puppy up.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta roll it because I can't.
I'll roll all the joints. We'll make some sigils. We'll throw them on there. We will smoke it up, just like back in the day. Thank you all so much for joining us on this high holiday of 420.
Guys, normally we have a little funny thing, and I just want to say, keep it witchy, but please keep it legal as well.
Stay high, stay happy, and we will see you next Friday on our regularly scheduled program. Keep it witchy.